One of the most common questions that people have, both for me and for themselves while they're dealing with being cheated on, is the question of whether or not they should reconcile. And one of the questions that fuels that is about assessing who their partner is. If someone can cheat on you, what does that say about who they are, what they're capable of? Is this who they really are? Is this who they've always been deep down, underneath who I thought they were, the nice guy, the nice girl? Were they actually this horrible person the entire time? Because if so, then the answer becomes a lot clearer. But if this was an aberration, a departure from who they really are, then it becomes a little bit more complicated. And can they return to that person? One of the most helpful questions that you can get your mind focused on at some point is not just what happened, but who did this? Who are you? Talking to your partner who cheated on you. Who are they really? Who are they now? Who are they becoming? Was the person that you loved really ever the person that you thought they were? Were all of those years together a lie? Did the affair expose something that was underneath the surface the entire time? Or did they change? Maybe they really were who you thought they were, and then something twisted in them, and now they've gone off onto this whole new dark path. And if that's the case, can they come back? Do they want to come back? A huge part of why betrayal can become traumatic is because our brain is not yet settled on who we think this person is. And until we get some real clarity in our own mind, not from them, not entirely from them, because we still need to evaluate it for ourselves, until we know who you're dealing with, you're going to be struggling for a long time because your nervous system needs to know who it can and can't be safe with. And I think that there's a lot of pressure to choose one extreme or another. Either this is who they always were, everything was fake, or this isn't who they are at all, this is just one mistake. Usually those answers are not fully accurate, and so you're not going to fully believe them because they're too simplistic and you're smarter than that. But a lot of people give advice that way, and so I think that we have to accept that type of advice and that type of framework. So let's just talk about a couple of different options. And you can begin sifting through your actual evidence, your actual experience, your own intuitive and emotional responses to your partner to kind of get a feel for where you think they might fall. Sometimes the first possibility is that the affair really does reveal who they've always been. And the affair, the infidelity, just brings all of that into blinding clarity. You look backward and suddenly there's this clear pattern. Maybe you were starting to see it already. Maybe you should have seen it. It doesn't matter. Don't have any judgment around that. What's the point? The point is to see it now. Maybe you can see that there always was lying, that there's always been entitlement, that they've always been needing this extra attention beyond just you in the relationship. Maybe their boundaries have been really questionable for years. Perhaps manipulation was just second nature to them. They almost get off on the idea of being able to control other people's reality and perception of them. And then this becomes especially blindingly obvious when the same patterns that create the infidelity continue after the discovery. If they keep lying, if they keep protecting the affair partner, if they blame you for everything, if they minimize everything, if they only admit to something when there's extremely clear proof. In these types of scenarios where you can see this clear through line from who they were before you discovered it, to the discovery, to how they're acting now, if it's just a straight line, then you have to come to terms with the fact that you were duped, you were fooled, you probably should have seen it. And that's a wound to your ego, but it's a wound worth receiving so you can have more clarity on who they actually are. And so for you, healing will look a lot like grieving. Grieving the person that you thought that you had, and it's really weird because you're not even grieving a real person and it's not like they're dead, but you just thought that you were with someone so much better and so much more special. And other people will probably be celebrating the fact that you've finally seen who they are. Meanwhile, it's tearing you up inside because you thought that there was something better there. And the biggest thing that you have to stop doing is trying to continue to defend and rationalize their behavior when they're not even doing a good job trying to do that. The second option, which does happen, is this is a massive aberration or departure from who they've always been. Sometimes you can look at, say, 20 years of someone's life and genuinely struggle to find anything that resembles what they did during the affair. They'd always been dependable. They'd always been loving. They generally acted with integrity. They never really displayed these patterns of deception or exploiting others. But then something happened. It was like a demon took over their mind. Something snapped. They went crazy. I'm using these terms as metaphors, but something big shifted. Suddenly there was a profound insecurity or a desperate need for validation just out of nowhere, like an identity crisis, a midlife crisis. And none of that excuses the affair, but it's like the problem came out of nowhere and their response was the infidelity. And it's like you want to be able to say, that wasn't them, like that's not who they really are. And of course, it technically was them. Of course, it really is them, and it doesn't fully get rid of the damage that was caused. But it's like you can say that that behavior was genuinely and profoundly inconsistent with the person that they've always been. And the important thing here is that there's the evidence after the fact, too. It's who they were before, and it's also who they are now. There's genuine remorse, not just regret from being caught. They're actively trying to do everything they can to make things right. They're addressing not just the betrayal, but the underlying emotional reasons or whatever it was that led to them being vulnerable enough to make that stupid decision. And I think that the important thing here, if you're in this category, is a couple of things. One, you still are allowed to have the boundary that says, if you do this to me once, I don't want to be in the relationship. I think some people feel like you owe it to someone because that's not the real them to give them a chance, even if you don't want to. That's not true. You do not have to give it a chance. You can leave. The second thing, though, is if you are choosing to reconcile, I really do recommend not just too quickly forgetting that they are, in fact, someone who did cheat on you, that they did betray your trust. Their consistency before and after are great signs that healing is possible now, but you don't want to just sweep it under the rug. That can lead to a lot of resentment later or repeated patterns in the future. Another category that's worth considering is a little bit of both. Maybe they are, in the ways that matter, who they've always been, who you thought they were, but now you also understand that there is also this kind of dark side to them, if you want to describe it that way. And what I mean by this is that the affair isn't saying that your partner is now someone that you never knew. You weren't completely deceived. But it's also not just this one thing that's out of the ordinary. Maybe they were always kind, loving, generous, and devoted to their family, but now you realize that there was this massive need for validation that was there the whole time, and you didn't see it. And that can be alarming. That can be jarring. And maybe you thought that you could view them as like this very emotionally strong person, and you realize that that one element of your perception of them was completely off. For some people, this can be related to shame. Maybe it's about their inability to tolerate difficult emotions. Maybe it can be around boundaries. But this category is kind of like they have this one Achilles heel. It's not that they're this horrible monster, like in category 1. It's like they have this secret problem, this secret monster inside them. They aren't a monster, but they have this monster inside them, and they're still this good person. And then the right circumstances happen to fall into place. They were at one of their lower points, and then this happened. For this, I think that, again, the most important thing with this type of category isn't to get to a place where you say, okay, I know exactly what I'm going to do right away. That will come, and maybe you do know right away. But for the purpose of this video, what I'm saying is that you need to have a clear way to label them so that your own mind can know whether they are or aren't safe. And for this type of person, they're actually kind of the most difficult to label and to put a mental category around. Because just saying they're a narcissist, or they're a good person who made a mistake, or they're secretly evil, or they're damaged, all feel like they're not really grasping it. For this person, you need to be comfortable kind of having multiple labels, having multiple categories that they fall into. That it's kind of the yes and. They are who I thought they were, and they're also these other negative things too. And so with all these categories, and I'm sure there are more ways that I could hash this out, it would just become a very long and repetitive video at that point if I went through every tiny little nuance. The whole goal, though, is to actually assess who they are in light of all of the evidence. Look backward at who they were before all this happened, look at the moment of discovery, what was happening during the affair as well, and then look to the present/future of like, where are they trending? What's been going on now? Look at all of the good patterns, look at all of the dishonesty patterns, look at all of the how they treat other people patterns, look at all the how do they handle temptation, responsibility, shame, boundaries, conflict, those patterns, because it's all information. The affair is information about their character, their response to the affair is information. It's not just one thing, you have to look at all of it. And you're able to have tentative answers. You don't have to say, this is my once for all answer about who this person is. You're able to put up an image, assess it, see if it fits, see if it feels right, and then update it later on as well. But a lot of people find themselves in a very jarring situation where they're going back and forth between two completely contradictory versions of who they think is sitting across from them, sitting next to them. And it's painful. Like, it's very, very painful and disorienting. So for your own sake, you need to update your perception of them. It can't just be how you thought of them before, and it can't just be a caricature of what your gut reaction is to the infidelity. It needs to be informed so that it's comprehensive enough so that it fits all the evidence, so that you're not jumping back and forth all the time. And so what might it sound like to have a more comprehensive answer? It might sound something like, I still think that he or she is the fundamentally loving, devoted person that I knew. I don't think that 20 years were completely fake, but I now understand that there's a much deeper need for validation than I ever realized. There's a lot of weaker boundaries, and that I'm kind of embarrassed to be with that person now. I feel some shame on their behalf because I thought they were stronger than this. The affair was wildly inconsistent with the majority of the things about who they are and how they've lived. I don't think that they're secretly evil. I see someone when I look at them now who I genuinely loved, I still love, but who also has this massive unaddressed weakness, and I need to see more about how they handle that before I know whether I feel safe with them. That is one example. Another example might be, I think that this person is some of the things that I believe that they were. You know, there is still some warmth and funniness and some kindness, but I also think that this event, the infidelity, has dramatically affected just how I view them as a whole. Looking back, there's always been this difficulty with responsibility. There's always been this creeping need for attention and validation from other people. And the affair really did connect these things for me, and I can't ignore them anymore. So I don't necessarily think that the relationship was entirely fake, because I know that what I contributed to it was real, and I know that there were probably real parts from them as well. But I just can't see a way forward from this, because now I see them for who they really are. So again, I could give a bunch more examples, but that's kind of the level of like detail and nuance that you want to start including in your thinking to prevent the constant back and forth, so that you can have a settled answer, so you can make an informed decision.